Hey Cake Chums and Mini Chums, and welcome back to another episode of Mr. Baker's Cake School. Now, you may have noticed that we're not actually in the Mr. Baker's Cakes kitchen this week, and there's a very good reason for that. Unfortunately, my mummy's been a little bit poorly over the last couple of weeks, and so to help her out while she gets better, I've come and moved in with her just to kind of cook her dinners and make sure that she's okay, really. Don't worry though, she's doing really well, and I'm sure we'll be back in the Mr. Baker's Cakes kitchen soon. But in the meantime, I couldn't leave you without your weekly helping of baking fun, of course, so I've managed to find a quiet little corner while we can get together. And because we're at my mummy's house, I thought we'd do a bake this week in her honour. Now, you might not have known this, but my family's actually from a country called Wales, which is over to the side of England. And we have quite a few bakes of our own in Wales that we're very proud of. So this week, I thought I would teach you one of those. I wonder if you can work out what it is. In this week's episode of Mr. Baker's Cake School, we're making Welsh cakes. Let's get to the video. Now, if I was to describe a Welsh cake to you, it would probably be somewhere between a biscuit and a scone, but it's not really like either of them. It's a very flat, kind of cakey. It's really rather strange and quite hard to explain. It might just be easier if I make them so you can see what they're like. Now, just like with the chocolate brownies a few weeks ago, I don't actually have my own recipe for Welsh cakes, as rather shamefully, I don't make them all that often. So I was wondering, who could I get to give me a hand with making Welsh cakes? And then I started thinking about last year's series of the Great British Bake Off. Now, by far and away, my favourite baker in 2019 series was Michelle. If you don't remember, she was the one who kind of came in with a really strong start and was by far and away, at least in my opinion, the strongest baker of the series. Unfortunately, things went a bit wrong in week 5 and we said goodbye to her. Some might argue a bit prematurely, but that's a discussion for another day. Anyway, in case you don't remember, I'll pop a little clip in of her in action right now.
Oh, I am living, sleeping, dreaming, everything Bake Off. I feel like I've got a sweat on. God, I've got such a sweat on. Oh my God, my heart's pounding. Oh my God, I'm in a tiz already. I am Welsh, so I had to go with a dewi y Ddraig Gymraeg. Barbrith teulu ni, tea to loaf teg. Noson Caws, which is cheese night in Welsh. I'm going down the Welsh theme again. What the heck does an English rose look like? I'm Welsh.
You're not Welsh by any chance, are you?
It's absolutely exquisite.
It's faultless, actually.
Pretty well the best cake I've ever eaten.
So anyway, I reached out to Michelle and asked if she would mind lending me her much prized Welsh cakes recipe, and I'm delighted to say that she was more than happy for us to have a go. In fact, she was so happy for us to have a go that she sent me a little message just for you guys.
Hi, hope you're all well and keeping safe. I've given Mr. Baker my Welsh cake recipe for him to teach you how to make them. They are super delicious and super easy. I hope you like them as much as I do. So go and give them a go. I cannot wait to see them.
So first of all, let me say a massive thank you to Michelle for giving us her recipe for Welsh cakes, and let's hope that I do a good job teaching you guys how to make them. Anyway, it's that time again. Time to go wash our hands, pop on our aprons, and let's get baking. I'm sat down today and it feels really weird. I never bake sitting down, but never mind. The first thing I'm going to do, as always, is take you through all of the ingredients you will need to make Michelle's Welsh cakes recipe. To start with, you will need 280 grams of self-raising flour. So remember, that's the one that's got the raising agent in. If you can't get hold of any self-raising flour, what you can do is use 280 grams of normal plain flour and add in 2 extra teaspoons of baking powder. Top tip for you there. You are going to need 115 grams of unsalted butter, and just like when we made scones, this has come straight out of the fridge, so it's nice and hard. I've already cut mine up into cubes. If you'd like to know how to do that, you can go back and watch our scones video, which shows you how to prepare your butter ready for this type of recipe. You are going to need 115 grams of caster sugar, and we're just using regular white caster sugar today, so a nice and easy ingredient to get hold of for once. You are going to need 1 teaspoon of baking powder. You're going to need 200 grams of your choice of dried fruit. I'm using sultanas because they are my favourite, so I generally choose to use sultanas if there is a choice. But you can of course use raisins or currants or even dried cranberries, whatever you fancy. You're going to need 1 large egg, which I've already cracked into my bowl here ready to use, 1 teaspoon of ground mixed spice, and 3 tablespoons of milk, and I'm using semi-skimmed milk today. Now we might not end up using all of this in the recipe, but I've got the 3 tablespoons ready just in case. Now as I said earlier, Welsh cakes have an awful lot in common with scones, so a lot of the things we're going to be doing to make them will seem familiar to you. So hopefully if you've already had a go at my scones recipe, you should find this one nice and easy. Now the first thing I want you to do is sieve your self-raising flour into a large mixing bowl. Now unfortunately my mummy doesn't have a large mixing bowl, so I'm going to hope that this bowl is big enough, but I might get a bit messy. I've already sieved my flour, so I'm just going to pour it straight in, but if you haven't yet, make sure you sieve it. In with that flour, I'm going to put in the baking powder, the mixed spice, and our cubes of butter. Now, just like when we made scones, we're now going to combine all of these together with our fingers until they look like breadcrumbs. Now again, if you haven't watched the scone video yet, you might like to go and do that first, but I will try and show you as best as I can again while I'm doing it now. So basically, I like to cover all of the butter with the flour, and then what we're going to start to do is pick it up and squeeze it between our fingers and then drop it back in the bowl. And I'm going to pick up 2 more cubes, squeeze them together and drop them back in the bowl. Now because your butter's come straight from the fridge, it should be quite hard, which means that when you squash it, it shouldn't just go splat. Keep working your way around in that flour, trying to find all of those cubes and make sure you've given them a jolly good squeeze. It smells really nice because you can smell that lovely ground mixed spice. Once you've squeezed all the cubes, you're then just going to keep going, squeezing all the bigger bits that are left into that flour, still just using your fingers. And then once you've done that, it's time to use the other technique I taught you when we made scones, where you just pick up some of the butter and flour mixture and then rub your hand over the top like that. And what that will start to do is break down any bigger lumps that are left and combine them much more thoroughly with the flour. Remember, it's about having one hand pointing upwards with your fingers slightly open, the other hand pointing downwards with the fingers slightly open, and then just rubbing them over the top of each other. And what will happen is as you mix them together, it will go through the space in your fingers and fall back in the bowl. I've seen lots of awesome pictures of you guys doing this when you're making your scones, so I think you've all got this technique nailed. You want to keep doing this until you can't see any more lumps of butter at all, and the mixture just looks like breadcrumbs. When you've got to that stage and your mixture looks a little bit like mine does, then the next thing we need to do is add in the sugar and our dried fruit. And then pouring in the sultanas. Remember, if you don't want to use sultanas or you don't have them, you can choose a different fruit. Some people even leave their Welsh cakes plain, so if you don't like dried fruit at all, that's always an option too. And then just still using my fingers, I'm going to mix these together. It's really hard to do this sitting down. Might have to stand up. Once all those dry ingredients are mixed together, we're going to make a well. And we've done this a couple of times now, so hopefully you remember what that means. You're right, it's where we dig a hole in the middle of those dry ingredients, ready to add in our wet ingredients. So our wet ingredients today are our large egg and some of our milk. So I'm just going to give my egg a quick mix with a fork, just to break the yolk up. And then that can go into the middle, and then on top of that I'm going to add in 2 of the 3 tablespoons of milk. So remember, we've got 3 altogether, but I'm just going to start with 2. We might not need all of it. And then starting with the fork, I'm just going to bring those dry ingredients into the wet ingredients to start to mix them together. Can you see how messy I am when I don't have my big bowl? But it's okay, I'll clean it up in a minute. Once it's starting to come together into lumps, what I'm going to do is switch from using the fork and go back to using my hand. And what you want to do now is to start to squeeze this all together to make it into a dough. Now hopefully you should find that your dough starts to come together and you're able to push it into a nice big ball like this. If you're finding it's a little bit dry, then that's when you can add a little bit more of your milk. Don't just put it all in though, because you might only need a little bit, so add a tiny bit at a time. But if, like me, you've been able to get it to come together in a big ball like this without that extra milk, then you don't need to use it at all. The next thing we need to do is roll this out. So I'm going to clear away my bowls here and make a bit more space. Now when you're ready to roll out your mixture, what you want to do is make sure you have a nice clean surface, and we're just going to dust it, like we've done before, with a little bit more flour. Take your ball of dough, pop it on the top, and you can put your bowl out of the way. Dust the dough with a bit more flour, and then just like we've done a few times now, we're going to start by squashing it down with our hands. Now a top tip for when you're using a rolling pin to roll something out is to keep moving the dough or the pastry to make sure that it doesn't get stuck. So what I like to do is start in the middle, roll in one direction, roll in the other direction, and then very carefully move my dough so that it's facing the other way, and then I'll do the same again. Roll it in one direction and then back in the other direction. Now we want our dough to be about 1 centimetre thick, which isn't very big at all. So this is another chance for you to grab your ruler and practice your measuring. And then once your dough is all rolled out, we're going to grab a round or a fluted pastry cutter. I think this one is about 6 centimetres, but I don't have a ruler here to check, I'm afraid. And then we're going to cut out rounds of our dough. Now, unlike scones, you can twist the cutter this time, and you'll probably find you need to because there's a lot of sultanas in here. I'm going to have to stand up again, so give them a good press down, twist it around, and then put those to the side. Once you've cut out as many rounds as you can from your dough, what we're going to do is push all of those cut-off bits back together, and just like we've done before, we're going to roll them out again. And once you've done that, we're going to cut out even more. And then you can just keep going, pushing it back together, rolling it out, cutting out some more until you've used all of it. Once you've cut out all of your rounds, it's time to cook your Welsh cakes, and this is where things get really strange, because we don't cook Welsh cakes in the oven. In fact, Welsh cakes usually get cooked on a cast iron griddle or a hot plate. Now I don't know about you, but not many people have those things at home, so instead I'm going to show you how you can use a normal frying pan on the hob to cook your Welsh cakes. So I'm going to have a bit of an adjustment here, and I'll show you what to do next. So what I've got here is my hob, which you've seen me use before, and a heavy bottomed frying pan. Heavy bottomed just means it's a bit thicker than normal. If you've only got a normal one, that will be fine too. And we're going to cook our Welsh cakes over a medium-low heat. And my hob goes up from 0 to 9. So when I say a medium-low, I'm going to be putting my hob on number 3. Now we want to let this get nice and hot, because if we were doing this on a proper traditional griddle, that would be made of cast iron and it would be very hot indeed. Now you guys know the rule for when we're working with hot things. If our adult says that they have to do this bit, then I don't want to hear any arguments. Now the best way to tell that your pan is hot enough to use is when you drop a drip of water into it. The drip should sizzle and bounce around. Mine's not doing that yet, so I know that this pan isn't hot enough yet. It's hot because I can see the drip bubbling, but it definitely didn't bounce around. So I'm going to give it a couple of seconds longer. Let's try again. That's a bit more like it. The other thing I'm going to add to the pan before I put some Welsh cakes in is a little bit of butter. Now it doesn't need to be a lot, and so what I like to do is holding the block, is just run it around the pan a couple of times, and you can probably see why you need an adult to do this, because it would be very easy to hurt yourself if you touched the pan. And then I like to start by just putting in one Welsh cake to check the temperature of the pan and the cooking time that I've planned for. Now I normally cook my Welsh cakes on one side for about 3.5 minutes, and then I'll turn them over and cook them for another 2.5 to 2.25 minutes, but you might find you need to adjust those times for your hob. That's why I always start with one, because if you get it wrong, you don't want to have wasted lots of Welsh cakes. Now this is a good time to practice using a clock or a timer to see how long your Welsh cakes have been in for. It's been about 2.5 minutes, which means I should be able to turn this one over in about 1 more minute. When it's time to turn over your Welsh cake, we're going to use a fish slice, and this is definitely something that your adult will need to do. So just gently slide the fish slice underneath and then flip it over. Hopefully you can see that this has got a lovely golden colour to it. It did crack a little bit, but that's okay. So remember, that was 3.5 minutes on the first side and about 2.5 to 2.75 minutes on this second side. It doesn't take us long to cook on that second side. Once it's been in there for long enough, again we're going to take the fish slice and very carefully we're going to lift it out, pop it back on the greaseproof paper over here. Now before I cook any more, I need to put a little bit more butter in. Not too much. Ooh, got a bit noisier then. And this time I'm going to cook my Welsh cakes in batches of 3. 1, 2, 3, and then I'm going to put my timer on for that 3.5 minutes. Now while those are cooking, I'm going to tell you what you can do to finish your Welsh cakes off. One of the ways we like to do it is to sprinkle them with a little bit of caster sugar. My mum tells me that in her family when they were little, they actually used to take the whole Welsh cake and pop it in the bowl of sugar one way, flip it over, and then the other way. So it almost ends up with a covering of sugar, just like a donut. So you can do it that way as well if you want to, but that's a lot of sugar. If you prefer just to sprinkle a bit on, that's okay too. Now we're looking for a golden brown colour, kind of like this one over here. But some of them will come out a little bit darker, and that's okay too. You just don't want any of them to be black, so do keep an eye on them carefully. And then we just keep going. And then what feels like a gazillion years later, I'm ready to pop my last ones in. I hope it hasn't been too boring for you watching your adult do all of the hard work, but hopefully you've had the special job sprinkling the sugar on them as they come out of the pan. Now when you're ready to eat your Welsh cakes, you can of course eat them just as they are, or some people like to spread them with butter, or even something like honey or jam. I think you'll have to try a few of them and see which way is your favourite. Oh, and while these last couple are finishing up, it seems like the perfect time to remind you about my super exciting competition. So if you haven't yet watched last week's episode where we were making gingerbread men, you won't have seen that I launched a competition to win a Kenwood K-Mix stand mixer. If you'd like to get your hands on that awesome prize, then all you need to do is watch last week's video, bake a batch of delicious gingerbread men, and then decorate them however you want. That's it. The competition closes next Thursday, so you've got plenty of time to get your entries in, and then I'm going to announce the winner in next Friday's video. I'm already super excited to find out who's going to win. I wonder if it will be you. Oh, I think these last two are ready as well, so I'll take them out of the pan. Sprinkle them with a little bit of sugar, and then I can turn this off. Now remember, this is going to stay hot for quite some time after we turn it off, so even if your adult has walked away, don't be touching the hot pan or the hot hob, okay? But there you go guys, that's how you bake a batch of Michelle's traditional Welsh cakes. I'm sure you'll agree they look absolutely delicious, and you might have noticed that I couldn't wait until the end to try one. But it's tradition that at the end of the video I get to try what we've been baking, so I guess I'll just have to eat another one. Now you should find that when you bite into your Welsh cake, it should be a little bit crispy on the outside, but then nice and soft and fluffy in the middle. Let's find out. Absolutely perfect. You get that really nice buttery crunch on the outside, and then inside is a really nice soft and fluffy cake with that little hint of spice from the mixed spice. I don't know why I don't bake these more often. I think I'm going to have to start. Anyway guys, thank you so much for watching episode 6 of Mr. Baker's Cake School, this week from Mummy Baker's house. And I do hope you've enjoyed learning how to make traditional Welsh cakes. I must say a massive, massive thank you to Michelle from the Great British Bake Off for sharing her recipe with us. And I know that she's super excited to see the results of your baking adventures this week. So when you've had a go at your Welsh cakes, do make sure that you share them with me on social media so that I can pass them on to her. Don't forget, as always, if you did enjoy this video, you can give it a thumbs up down below, which will make sure YouTube know to show it to even more budding bakers. And if you haven't yet subscribed to Mr. Baker's Cakes here on YouTube, you can do that by hitting the big red subscribe button down there on the right. If you have already subscribed and you'd like to receive a notification every time I upload a new video, you can also hit the bell icon. In the meantime, as always, I do hope you have a happy and healthy week. Stay safe, stay indoors, and I'll see you next time for more baking fun. Take care guys.